Hey everybody, Matt Johnson here. This video is all about generating ideas when you feel like you have artist block. Now, everybody out there wants to come up with a great idea, visualize it in their head, and start putting the paintbrush to the canvas and have this thing manifest itself into something amazing. We look at a lot of finished artwork and we think that that's how artists arrived there, but it's often not true. There's a process of working out shapes, working out composition, working out structure, and it often just starts from having no ideas at all. I used to find myself starting a sketch and then developing that sketch and continuing to just work at it as though the first idea I had was the best one, and that's rarely the case. Sinix did a video recently, and if you have not watched Sinix YouTube channel, that's Sinix, definitely check out his YouTube channel because his tutorials and his demos are excellent. I was watching one of his recently where he started with some abstract shapes that looked kind of like what I'm doing here. Obviously his are way better, and he started kind of visualizing in the clouds and seeing what could be there where there's really nothing, and it helped me learn a lot about how to compose small characters or small concepts, and so I thought I'd try it out, and this is me brainstorming in that fashion. So what I was drawing started looking like this little crab dude, and I liked it a lot, so I picked the strongest one. I don't think it was the last one that I did. I think it was the second to last sketch that I did, and just started kind of detailing it out, giving it little mechanical features, and pretending that the light was being cast down from above, and just seeing what would happen, because I don't really draw robots like this, especially not without a reference, and it was really fun to just play and kind of add in fake complexity and kind of see where it goes. I know that if I took this further, like to render it out, I would want to be a little more specific about some of that, but you don't have to understand complex machinery to create complexity in your artwork if you're just following some basic rules. So I'm just kind of winging it, BSing it with this robot, but it starts to look like I know what I got, like I know what I'm doing. I think something important about brainstorming in this way is to not get too hung up in rendering or making too much sense of it, and see it as an exercise in freedom and in figuring out a little bit more about how your brain works when you're trying to come up with an idea. And for me, I found that it was hard for me to take a different approach after I started one approach. So what I decided to do was take this little crab design, set it aside, and try to come up with something completely different with a completely different set of abstract shapes. And what I started drawing was this little blob, and it looks a little bit like a jellyfish, so I leaned into that for a minute. I started remembering those floating robots from the Matrix back in the day that were, you know, say what you will about those movies, those were pretty cool, terrifying robots floating around out in space. So, well, was it space? I guess it was just Earth, right? It was just Earth overrun with aliens, robots, whatever. All Matrix conversation aside, what I ended up doing was noticing that this pattern wasn't really working for me, so I just broke the silhouette completely and decided to go away from this blob that tapers into tentacles and make it a little bit more like 2 or 3 blobs that are weighted in a different way. I knew I could still do a little floating robot, but instead of just beating up the same composition over and over again, I tried to turn it on its head and come up with something that would surprise myself. And after that, I started trying to build a little volume and give it some, you know, metallic, mechanical looking shapes. And I think I had a little bit better luck with my first sketch of the little crabby guy. The fun part about working with silhouettes like this is that you can make up everything inside and it's not wrong. It can work. It can work a lot quicker than if you just start trying to build shapes and silhouette at the same time. So all of the complexity that you add inside that silhouette, it kind of follows some rules and some structure, and so you just play with it. And a lot of this is me just playing with it and seeing if I can make something that looks convincing and cool, and building out some of the lighting again like I did with the crabby guy. I don't want to get too detailed though, because I want to keep having ideas. So I quickly abandon this and start on another one to see if by changing up the direction of the composition, if I can get different or better ideas. And it still isn't really working for me because I don't feel like this silhouette really lends itself well to what I was trying to do for a robot. But hey, I don't know if I need to be blaming the silhouette. It is probably all me in my head. I bet if I gave this silhouette to somebody else more talented than me, they would knock it out of the park. But that is toxic thinking. We don't sit around and draw and think about how someone else would draw better than we do. That doesn't help us get better. What helps us get better is exercising these muscles and trying to figure out what our own shortcomings are and how we can address those. So while I say that about someone else being better, it's very important to not compare yourself to others while you're creating, because you're creating at your level and this is your opportunity to explore what you can do. Here again, I didn't feel like I was making any progress from one to the next, so I thought I should flip the silhouette around a little bit, maybe start thinking about the forms in a little different way. Instead of this like bulbous bee-like creature, I decided to go for something a little more like a hornet maybe, where it's got these really complex shapes in the silhouette, and I started to like this one a lot more. And so I kept noodling around with it a little bit, and some of this isn't even about character brainstorming. This is saying, how do I make a panel look like it's got a little bit of light shining on it from the top? Or how do I define these little tiny areas that make this look mechanical? And I don't even know that I had a lot of success with that, but I was exploring it in my mind and trying to put some things down that looked right in just a few simple brush strokes. I know that I can render out something that looks mechanical, but what I am trying to get better at is doing that in economic, efficient brushstrokes. What can I do in very small ways that looks really cool in my little thumbnail? Because oftentimes selling someone on an idea is about what looks great in that thumbnail and not how well I can render out a robot in 8 hours. So that's the part of this I'm really trying to focus on getting better at, is like, for instance, the little mechanical eye on this thing. I did that eye in 3 brush strokes. There was one dark circle for the eye, one highlight, and then one little under highlight on the other side of the eye to make it look transparent. I felt really good about being able to draw that eye so quickly with just 3 little strokes. So I put those 2 together. Now I have a crawling robot, I have a floaty robot, and I thought, why not go ahead and try and do some sort of rolling robot? So I start thumbnailing ideas, and the first things that come to mind are total ripoffs of BB-8 from Star Wars, Short Circuit with his rolling treads like a tank or something like that, and the little cute guy from WALL-E that runs around angrily sweeping things up all the time. I thought that guy was adorable. So I recognized what I was doing and then decided to look at their basic shape patterns. So I outlined those basic shape patterns in red just to give myself a strong visual of what they were, and decided to go in a different direction with my shape patterns, and still came up with something that was kind of cute and tiny, and has that kind of exclamation point structure of the little guy from WALL-E without being a total ripoff of that shape and that character. And from there, evolved it a little further by moving the head angle around and changing the proportions a little bit. And you see how this just like started from, you know, basic sketches of robots that I've known just coming out of my subconscious, like the most familiar types of characters, and turned into something altogether new just by observing how my iterative process was going. So there's a couple of different ways that the iterative process has worked through this video. The first one was the crab guy, where I did the same style sketch from abstract all the way to something that you could see what it is, and I could kind of tell what it was before I did any value on it at all. The second process was breaking my shape pattern with this jellyfish thing I was working on, and then I said, wait a minute, that's just not working. Broke the shape pattern and started something new. And the third one, started drawing all of these little things from my subconscious, and then decided to analyze those and try to do something that didn't fit into either one of those, or into any of those 3 basic shapes. So this is how I started, with nothing, just to warm up one day, just to get some ideas on paper and see what I could learn about myself. And that's what's really important a lot of times with this, is it's not just about learning skills that are out there and developing new skills. It's about learning your own tendencies and looking inside and saying, what are my patterns, what are my blind spots, and how can I challenge those? So that's my 2 cents on this video. I hope that it helps somebody out there to sketch a little bit better or not be so intimidated by a blank canvas, because I guarantee if you start scribbling and start paying attention to yourself and even just viewing those scribbles as, you know, clouds in the sky that you can imagine something in, at least you're working on something artistic, you're working on your own creativity, and you're flexing that muscle. If anybody out there has any other ideas on how to spark creativity and get warmed up when you're creating or tackle artist block, I'd love for you to leave me a comment. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't seen my other videos, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more.